are Vineyard.
Somos Viña.
We are Vineyard.
When someone puts a doubt in you like that, it's a seed. I would be lying if I'm not like, oh, it's still in there somewhere. It's a seed. I still hear the arguments at times. It is hard enough to do ministry, and then to have someone tell you that you might actually not be in the Lord's will doing what you're doing, it's a whole other level. And so for the longest time, honestly, especially because I was just a kid, I was 17. The only thing I held on to was God made an exception for Deborah. So for the longest time, I thought, I'm just an exception. Maybe it's just
interesting.
I can't explain it, but he's done it before. So maybe if he told me I was doing that, maybe I'm an exception. And that's really all I kind of had to hang on to until I was in college and studied,
interesting.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it took years
Yeah. And I was still a Vineyard pastor when I was still wrestling with it, wrestling with, just making sure a little bit, because for so long I thought, well, maybe I'm just an exception. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like I was Miss Every woman should be a pastor.
Right.
Because I didn't know.
How many exceptions can there be?
Exactly. I'm not trying to sound exceptional or anything.
Right.
I'm an exception. I don't know. And so
it's the right question. Is because you can't have all exceptions.
Right.
Welcome to the We Are Vineyard podcast, conversations to help us grow with Jesus and each other. In today's episode, our host, Jay Pathak, talks with Sharon McCarter. Sharon is a pastor at Vineyard Maryville in Tennessee and serves Vineyard USA as the regional leader for the Southeast region. Let's listen in.
Well, Sharon, thanks for joining me for this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you were saying that you've listened to a lot of these, and that we were talking about the different ways people listen to this form, like the gym, driving your kids around. I've heard people saying that we are their landscaping. We're their landscaping soundtrack. They'll listen to this as they mow the lawn, and then, do the weeds or whatever. So I don't know. I think that's good. I'm not offended by that.
It really does help make the mundane things. To me, it's a lot of dishes. It's a lot of carpooling. It's a lot of that kind of thing. I'm like, no, this is helpful. You feel like you're in the room with people, hanging out with very interesting people.
Yeah. I was just talking to, because how old's your oldest and your youngest?
15. My son is 15, Bryce, and Breonna, 13.
Okay, so you're moving out of the Uber driver zone.
Yeah, sort of. We're teaching our son how to drive now, and so that's a whole new level of prayer.
It is. It is. Yeah. So we've moved out of Uber driver mode, which it's shocking the amount of time you get back. It actually is a little mind blowing. Wow, that was dozens of hours.
I dream about it. I do.
Well, it's coming. You're on the doorstep. Yay. Yeah, but when you add it up.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, you sound like me when I talk to parents of toddlers and stuff. I'm
yeah.
It gets better. So you're just reminding me.
It's true. Yeah, you tell, hey, imagine a day when you will leave the house without luggage. You don't have a bag and a stroller, and it's hard to imagine when you have small kids. But no, it's weird. You just, because when you add up, okay, hours doing dishes, laundry, maintaining my home, driving my kids. And you're like, wait a minute, I think that might be a third of my waking hours.
Yeah. We do.
Making food, cleaning up food.
I know.
We might get to half, So it's nice when you get that Uber driver zone out, except for you don't get to hang out with them as much.
Right.
Which is a loss. But anyway. Well, you've listened to this, so you kind of know what we'll do, and we've known each other a bit, so it should be more fun. I have some exciting, but I always learn things about people, even people I've known for a long time. So I'm sure we'll find something. So start where everything starts, which is where you were born and where you grew up.
Yeah, well, I was born in Chicago.
Really?
Yeah. I was born in Chicago, but we moved to Florida when I was just a few months old. So it barely counts. barely. But my mom is from Chicago, and my dad is from Baltimore. And we followed my grandparents. They wanted to retire in Florida, the whole dream. Mm-hmm. And so we moved down to Florida. And so I always joke around about how, like, I'm not Southern. I was like, nobody in Florida is Southern. I never knew what sweet tea was. Like, I was like, my it's very Chicago, Baltimore. I was a Cubs fan growing up because my grandparents were, and Bulls fan and all that stuff. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So Chicago and Baltimore.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. They have a fun, cute story.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Because, so did you ever go to Baltimore growing up?
Yeah. Yeah. Visit the grandparents.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, I didn't see you're already in a different lens for me. Right? Okay. So,
so my dad and my mom, my dad was in the Navy, and my mom was in an all-girls band as a drummer in the 60s.
Wow.
I know. The band was called The Weaker Sex, and she was an incredible drummer. Like, I don't know, she was on newspapers like best drummer in the Midwest, and that's my mom. She was a little rock star, and that's how they met. My mom was, doing a gig and met my dad, and it's really sweet. I think it was love at first sight for my dad, but not for my mom.
Yeah. Well, there's always one. One has to go first. Yeah. 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 That's definitely Danielle and I's story. I'm like, I remember exactly when I met you. She's like, I don't remember that, but it's okay. Somebody's got to go first.
Yeah.
So she's in a band. He's from the Navy.
Yeah.
Meet at a show. He just chases her around until and then they live in Chicago of all places, because that's where,
I think they moved to Baltimore for a minute. So my dad finished up school, but my mom was always really close to her parents. So it was like, oh yeah, we're going back to Chicago. And then of course, that's why we moved to Florida.
Right. Because you're still near the parents.
Yeah. They're the best. Like, I grew up very close to my grandparents.
Oh, that's cool. And so what exactly did your dad do? Like, what was his profession?
Oh, who knows, really? He did a lot of things. It was always in the banking world.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So he was always just a different kind of businessman, banker, but then ended up being an entrepreneur and like starting a temporary hiring company, like a temporary career or whatever. And did really well and retired that way. But growing up, it was, it was always hard. I felt like we were a little bit of a paycheck to paycheck family, because he was just in this banking world where it was like he was always in a bank that was closing down, or then he was the banker closing banks down. It was just always moving. Yeah.
But also a starter, it sounds like. He wanted to build stuff, make stuff, try stuff.
Oh yeah, he was an entrepreneur, and then so was my brother. My brother ended up being an entrepreneur, and so even as a church planner, I feel like so am I.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You can see the thread there, and so then and so you have siblings. So how many siblings do you have?
I have one brother. He's older and lives in Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And he did. Oh my goodness! Like he did a search engine in Tampa Bay before Google. So he was like in those. In that stream, and they did really well for themselves. Like he just wanted to be the person who didn't really need college. So he left college with one semester to go just to prove something, and then started the company and then did really well. And,
wow. Okay. So a lot of startup, do a new thing vibe. And then for you growing up, was church like a normal part of life? This is like what we do. We're like praying at the dinner table.
Oh no.
Okay.
No, that was not us. So, but my parents, thank goodness, they kind of knew they wanted their kids to be in church. So they were the people that maybe they grew up in church, but then they left the church when they were, in their 20s, and then they had kids and brought the kids back to church. But we were, years later, I found out that they were really just dropping us off at Sunday school and going to breakfast.
I love it.
And picking us back up. So I just think they knew enough. We want our kids to be in church, but we don't know much about it really as adults. But then that church was amazing and reached out to my parents and brought them in. And they ended up, it was a Methodist church, and they ended up in a discipleship class. And I don't know, it changed everything for them. And then so it's weird. So I feel like I grew up in church, but I also feel like my parents and I were growing kind of at the same time, same speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't like super in our home or like we said, God is great, God is good. And we did our bedtime prayer, we did our memorized prayers and stuff like that. But other than that, there wasn't much in the house.
Yeah, it wasn't like they weren't, so they didn't even grow up necessarily super connected to a local church. But okay, that's interesting. And so when you think back on those experiences, that was positive, negative, neutral. So like by the time you're leaving home, are you like, man, I just love Jesus. I love the church. I love, or is it more like, I don't know, I guess this is one of the things I do.
Yeah, it's so hard to explain. So my experience growing up in church, again, I didn't even know their story of dropping us off and, that kind of stuff. So I just thought we were a church family.
Right. Yeah, totally.
And so I always just felt really close to the Lord in a way that I cannot explain, So I'm in like this Methodist kids church thinking I could be a pastor one day, I mean, no idea, what is even happening, but just really, really loved the Lord and felt really close to Jesus my whole life. And it's not at all crammed down my throat. I just personally just felt the presence of God in my life. And oh my goodness, just a few years ago, my dad brought out this letter that he saved it's a letter I wrote him. I was in 3rd grade. He was going on a men's retreat and I wrote him like what I was praying over him for this men's retreat.
Wow.
I'm like, I don't even remember doing that. And he brings this out. He's had it in his jewelry box his whole life. Wow. And he's like, you prayed this over me. You were a 3rd grader. So yeah, it's just an interesting environment. It was like, we're all part of a church, but I just felt just really connected to the Lord. My brother had a bad youth group experience at a camp, and he sort of took a turn, and that was hard. Yeah. And then at one point, my parents left that Methodist church, and I ended up going just with my best friend to her church. And it was funny because then she left, her parents stopped going to that church, and then she came and went to my church. So a lot of my spiritual life has to do with one of my very best friends. Her name is Kristen Siomber. We've been best friends since kindergarten.
Really?
And we have been like spiritual sisters, both leading our family sort of closer to Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's just amazing how God gave us each other, and we were both pursuing the Lord. Even when our families, were in flux or whatever, we never stopped.
Wow. Yeah. There's so many things to ask there.
I know.
So you were friends from kindergarten.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like she might have been raised a little bit more in her family in the life of the church, but not similar to you. Oh, okay.
No, yeah, she was Lutheran and they were really disconnected. Huh. So none of it makes sense. The two of us just really, I don't know, we just really loved the church and wanted to be at the church all the time. So it was like if there was a function at my church, she would go, a function at her church, I would go. We went to all the camps together. We were just like in, and she's brilliant, by the way. She went to Harvard. She's an oncologist. She's incredible. But we've just lived these lives where we were, I don't know, we challenged each other in our faith. The iron sharpens iron our whole lives. Yeah, that's been her. And then when we got into high school, both of us were a little bit homeless without a church again, like our families and stuff. And then we ended up finding new friends in high school that became our very best friends. And we started going to their church. And that's when I grew. We went to their youth group. It was a Presbyterian youth group, a PCA. So again, it was like Methodist, Lutheran, PCA. This is my whole world. I don't know anything about anything else. And, but that youth group is where we just really connected. It was one of those really on fire youth pastors. I wanted everyone I knew to hear the gospel from him. It was like the way he presented it. I'm like, yes, I want everyone. So we invited all of our friends to this youth group. And so it's just so interesting. So the two of us ended up interning at this church. And again, we came from different worlds. Yeah. But we just side by side did this thing.
Wow. And that's all in Florida.
All in Florida.
So then as you're graduating, I mean, now you're doing all this stuff. Are you thinking as you're thinking about college?
Yeah,
I want to do ministry. Yeah. Or is it?
I wasn't. So my plan was I wanted to be a teacher And I wanted to be a high school teacher and volleyball coach. And so that was my plan. I was a planner, and I was going to go to the University of Florida. That's where my brother went. Another one of my best friends, she was going to be my roommate. We're all set. This is dream come true. I can't wait. And the summer before my senior year of high school, God radically changes everything. And on a mission trip with that PCA church, he just speaks to me one night and says, "You're going into ministry, and I'm going to do a quick work, and I need you to study now." It was just weird how those are the three things I knew he was saying to me.
So wait, how does that happen?
I don't know idea. So we're on a tiki hut somewhere worshiping the Lord.
Yeah, because you're in the, I mean, and I'm stereotyping, and that's not always helpful, but in the three different streams you're describing,
right?
It's not the kind of streams that it's like, let's have a prophetic moment where we hear the voice of the Lord, or we're going to prophesy to one another, but somehow in whatever you're doing. And where were you on the mission trip?
We were in the Dominican Republic.
Okay. So you're there.
We were assigned prayer partners. And so it's one of my prayer partner that I was assigned to is still a best friend today. And it was really hard labor type mission trip. We're mixing cement, I'm learning how to, shovel rock and make water. I mean, it was just crazy. So it was one of those so you got a 30-minute break. Like everyone was like, "Oh, you and your partner get to go pray at 2:30 in the tiki hut or something." So every day for, I think it was 10 days, maybe 14, you would just go and for 30 minutes pray with your prayer partner. And so, praying was, really held as high regard, so we're just connecting with the Lord and praying a lot. And and so, and then our worship services were just really powerful. And it's just a guitar in the tiki hut and really powerful worship services. And one night I just felt like the Lord speak to me and saying, "You're going to do that. You're going to be specifically a youth pastor. You're going to be a youth pastor. And I'm going to do this quick." And so that changed everything. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that can go in our story, but right after that happened, I told my youth pastor, who I just adored. And I remember him telling me, he just looked at me, he said, "Sharon, you can't, you're a girl."
Oh my goodness.
That was the exact, it was right then and there. And I had never even thought about it. What was so cool is that even though I held him in the highest regard, I never doubted what God said. I never once thought, it was more like my eyes were opened in a different way. And I remember there was a little swing set right by our cabins, and I was just out there praying. I was so upset. I didn't know what was happening. First, this is amazing calling. And then he's like, "Oh no." And so I just remember sitting out there and praying and crying. And I had a big decision to make. I was like, am I going to stay at this youth group? Because I know I'm supposed to pursue ministry now. And I just remember thinking, you know what? This is the youth group I want to bring my friends to. So I'm sticking it. I'm like, this is where I'm supposed to be now, even if it's just for now or just for my senior year. And so, so then we get back to school, and it's my senior year. I was just elected senior class president, which I just thought that was the greatest thing. But really, it was like God was just trying to build my confidence. Yeah. So then when I went back, I ended up starting an FCA and started preaching to my classmates. And my youth pastor came every time, and he helped me and he supported me. And over the years, he said that I had changed his mind. He wasn't allowed to say that publicly. Right. But he created internships for me. When I came back from college, he pretty much would just give me the middle school youth group or all this stuff. Really hands-on training. And after all of it, he said, I can't really say this out loud, but you've changed my mind about, women in ministry. Wow. It was really powerful.
Man, there is so many, there's so much happening there. So when you, what would you want to say to somebody? There's a lot of women, women that end up in that moment. So they're tracking along. Yeah. And then they have sometimes it's not quite as direct as that. It's way more subtle. It's, I don't think that's for you. Let's do this other thing. Or, have you ever considered maybe leading the women's Bible? There's a more indirect way that tends to happen. And it takes maybe a few reps before someone realizes, well, wait a minute. I think you're telling me I can't do this, but you're not saying it.
Right.
What would you want to say to someone? Because it doesn't sound like you had a lot of guidance. You just kind of kept going. But if you could guide someone in a moment like that, what do you think's wisdom?
Yeah, I think it's really important to, people are just people. And people let you down, and so it's like you really have to, it's like you have to, weigh these things. Like you look up to these people. Like I had to research, I had to weigh these things. I had to figure out what was happening. But then, but ultimately it's like we're not serving to please man. Like we have to please God. And if this is what God is saying to you, then he will meet you there. He will equip you. This is his plan for your life. And lots of people have been derailed, or tried, people have tried to derail people. And it's like, no, like if that was the Lord, you just keep faithfully following him and he will lead you. And I was pretty passionate about, and I still am, you can just serve where you're at. It wasn't like, oh, how dare you or whatever. I was still really grateful. They let me serve and they let me do it, like use my gifts. And I had so much to learn still. And so it wasn't about me and it wasn't about my calling. I was still like, okay, but if I really do become a youth pastor, I want to be one just like you, minus that part. So I still wanted to learn and I still had a lot. I don't know, humility goes a long way. Loving the whole church goes a long way. I was like, I'm glad I'm not, Presbyterian now, but I was like, I saw what they were saying in the Bible. So it was like, they're not wrong and they're not evil. They're not trying, they are also trying to live out their convictions. I have different convictions. And so there was no villainizing of people. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, but so this is a separate question, but it's similar. When and how did you start even just thinking about the Bible in relationship to that? I always find this interesting as I watch women go through a process you're describing and how almost every time they just kind of keep going along, but they always have this sort of niggling problem where they're going, I think I might not be living within the scriptures.
Right.
Because I don't quite know how to interpret this. But then the penny drops, usually sometime later, maybe even decades later, or where they're like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There's a way to think about the Bible in this that is really old, first of all. It's not like kind of a new feminist movement interpretation or something. It's historically aligned with how we think about these things. When did that penny drop?
Yeah, I will say that it took a long time. Because it's when someone puts a doubt in you like that.
Yeah.
It's a seed. And I would be lying if I'm not like, oh, it's still in there somewhere. It's a seed. I still hear the arguments at times. It is hard. It's hard enough to do ministry, and then to have someone tell you that you might actually not be in the Lord's will doing what you're doing. It's a whole other level. And so for the longest time, honestly, especially because I was just a kid, I was 17. The only thing I held on to was God made an exception for Deborah. So for the longest time, I thought, I'm just an exception. Maybe it's just
interesting.
I can't explain it, but he's done it before. So maybe if he told me I was doing that, maybe I'm an exception. And that's really all I kind of had to hang on to until I was in college and studied,
interesting.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it took years
Yeah. And I was still a Vineyard pastor when I was still wrestling with it, wrestling with, just making sure a little bit, because for so long I thought, well, maybe I'm just an exception. It wasn't like I was every woman should be a pastor.
Right.
Because I didn't know.
How many exceptions can there be?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say I'm exceptional or anything.
Right.
I'm an exception. I don't know. And so
it's the right question, is because you can't have all exceptions.
Right.
So, so that kind of thinking doesn't go very far for everyone. It might go for a few, but it doesn't go for everyone.
Yeah.
So then you have to do another set of work to be like, okay, if this isn't an exception, how does this fit within the norm, within these different, verses and different texts? Okay, that's a lot of internal work.
Yeah. Yeah. And later on, I could go on a bit. I mean, the book Slaves, Women, and Homosexuals by Webb, that was huge. Yep. Absolutely huge for me. Yep. That would probably be my biggest framework.
Interesting.
And it's interesting how relevant that has all become. But
I'd say,
that is that is, because that was I could go on and on about all that kind of stuff too. When I went to college and was also, okay, so let's rewind. Going back to, no, I was not. I was going to go to University of Florida.
Right.
I was set. That's where I was going to go.
Teacher, volleyball coach, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I love students. So it made sense. I wanted to be a high school teacher. And then God calls me into ministry. I go back and then I have this whole idea of quick work. I just felt like the Lord wanted me to go study ministry now. And I did not want to. I mean, when I tell you going to UF was like a dream, it was a dream. I really wanted to do that. And I spent weeks, like sleepless nights, literally wrestling with the Lord. Like, don't make me do this. Can I just go to college at UF and then go to seminary? I'm bargaining. We're doing all the things. And it was finally like, you win. I'm supposed to go study now. Wow. My mom and I just went on a Christian college tour in the Southeast. And that's how I ended up at Lee University. And it was a huge sacrifice. I was like, they don't even have a football team. I mean, I wanted the whole college experience. Yeah. But I ended up studying pastoral ministry at Lee University. Wow. But every summer I went home, I interned at that church.
And they see it. Your parents are like, yeah, this makes sense. Let's do this.
They do. They definitely see it. Oh my goodness. There's even little things like my parents ended up they helped start a Methodist church plant when I was in high school.
Wow.
So it was kind of fun because it gave me some worldview of a church plant because I had no clue. And, because it was a church plant, I'm 17, there's no teenagers, it's one of those things. That pastor came to me. I became their youth pastor as a senior in high school.
Interesting.
So I would literally go and run because they just had middle schoolers. And so I became a youth pastor at 17. I would go run their youth group like Sunday night from 5 to 7. And then I would go to my youth group from 7 to 9 as a student.
Wow.
And so, I was just doing it. The second the Lord said it, I just haven't stopped. I'm going to do it. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I was just running the plays. But it was funny because my parents, still being parents, were like, you know what, this is great. You're getting a pastoral ministry degree. You might want to think of like a backup plan.
Right.
And now I just thought they were nuts. I'm like, gosh, you don't understand. The Lord has called me. Yeah. And so even that, they were like, okay, we can sort of see it, but they're being parents. I tell people that now, like, are you sure you don't want like a business major?
Totally. Yeah.
So it's good that people are speaking that, but I just knew, I just wasn't afraid. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
So great. Wow.
Pastoral ministry.
So now you're at Lee University doing, was it Christian ministry or pastoral?
Well, I started in youth ministry and even I knew that was too easy. Literally like kayaking, for a class. And I'm like, okay. So I switched to pastoral ministry. Right. Because I wanted the preaching classes and the Bible and the theology and all that. And so, I was one of the only girls. It was, oh my goodness. So going to Lee University is nuts because it's a Church of God college. And literally, when I tell you this, I had never even heard of a Pentecostal. Didn't even know they were out there.
Well, how would you? You're just doing your thing. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm in my own little mainline world.
Totally.
I don't even know. So literally within the first week, I'm in my dorm room and all the girls are like figuring out that I don't know what you're all talking about. Like, I don't know what tongues is. I never even really read about tongues in the Bible. I don't know what so they are popping in videos like Brownsville Revival.
Oh, wow.
They're all like, Sharon, this is what's happening, and I'm like, I remember I'm like, okay, I was very freaked out. And I
bet. That's
falling over and all this stuff. And I just had a really good time with the Lord. I'm like, God, I do not know why you brought me here, but I'm not leaving until you show me. Wow. And that was a turning point when I was like, I don't know what any of this is, but I still feel like you led me here. And so that started a whole new journey where I was that's when I started like kind of devouring the Bible for the first time. Like, I need to know all of this. So that was a huge journey into this Pentecostal world and gifts of the Spirit and all the things. Yeah.
And it was like, it starts horrified, as you described. How did it start to move to less horrified to, was it more experiences? Was it more just, no, I just became a little more familiar? I mean, how?
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those, schools we had to go to chapel 3 times a week, and so all this is happening. And so I'm just taking it all in. Most of it was because of my roommate. It was like, she's legit. And this is, I'm like, okay, this is real. I mean, these people aren't crazy, and so it was a lot of late night talks with my roommate, a lot of experiencing it, and then a lot of word. I mean, just being in the Bible, I needed to see it in the word, and I kept seeing it. I was like, I'm not seeing, I mean, it's all right there,
Right.
So it was a steep growth curve for sure. It was lonely because I was, everyone else, it was like, that's where you go if you're, Church of God.
Right.
I laugh all the time. I'm like, I'm a researcher. I mean, why did I not know this school was but I didn't know any of it. I saw some bad stuff that I didn't love, and so I was like, okay, that's not legit. At Lee, it was really hard being the only woman in pastoral ministry, and then not speaking in tongues was this huge line that they had. Like you kind of learn that a lot of people at Lee and Pentecostals and stuff, they think that speaking in tongues is initial evidence.
Right.
So I spent years like, oh man, I just don't, do I not have something? I think I have not. I used to walk around being like, Billy Graham doesn't speak in tongues. Like,
Right. Exactly.
But I was leading a youth leaders. I was in a youth leaders association. So we're all studying youth pastors. And then I was leading it. I was doing ministry constantly. And then seeing some people be in the altar speaking tongues and then like not living it out, So, I mean, it was all this really confusing stuff that I had to sort of work through.
But they are technically egalitarian.
I think more so now.
Okay. Because I was going to say, they're willing to have you in the program.
Right.
Pastoral
I think there's
ministry.
still levels. Yeah. And I think even now there's like levels. So my sister-in-law just got ordained or something like that in the Church of God. But I think there's still maybe like levels of like, maybe you're not an overseer. I'm not sure what it is.
I see. Okay. So it might not be egalitarian. It's still like, no, we're not sure women can do all of ministry.
I'm not positive.
But either way, sociologically, women still aren't when you're going through the program. I'm the only woman. I'm the only person not speaking in tongues.
Yeah.
I wonder what this means. And then, but in there, are you having encounters with the Holy Spirit? I mean, you starting to go, wow, this is real, not just because I trust this girl, but.
Yeah, again, because I've always felt close to Jesus, it didn't feel different. It just felt more maybe free. I started raising my hands in worship, you know, and that was like a big deal. I remember my Baltimore grandma did come down and visit, and we brought her to a church, and she almost passed out. I mean, what are you doing?
What is this? Yeah, I've seen this on TV. Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah. Right.
So for me, it was just raising my hands, encountering the presence of God really powerfully, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? I can't really say it was more powerful than being in the Tiki Hut in Dominican Republic. It was the Holy Spirit, and it was His presence is powerful. So yeah, and I wasn't experiencing those gifts, so it wasn't different. You know, deep down, it's like, so I have dealt with a lot of doubt. Because you're like, oh my gosh, am I missing something?
Right.
When people are saying, oh, you don't really understand, or like there's this second level Christianity, and you're like, I don't. So it was just me and Jesus, I'm like, I don't think I'm missing out, but Lord, if I am, I want it. I want all of you. I want everything you have for me. Yeah. So it was a journey for sure.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. And it's such a formative time where you want to be as passionate as you can be, and you want to do all the things, and to feel like something's missing creates a lot of angst. Because I think you can get older and be like, well, whatever. I don't, no, I'm serious. But in that stage, it's, man, I want to do all the things for all the the world and we're going to change the whole world. And so to have something missing feels really bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was doing all the things I could. And one of my favorite things was in our Youth Leaders Association club, my junior and senior year, we took on 2 boys and girls clubs. And so we did youth group for them every Wednesday and Thursday, all through college. And I mean, we were just doing the stuff. And then even in my preaching classes, I think I ended up being like named the 2nd Excellence in Preacher Award, I was asked to speak at graduation. So again, like all
cool.
the leadership gifts were always being acknowledged.
Right.
I was always, leading things, being an RI, doing all the things, but then just an undercurrent. I was like, am I some kind of an exception?
Right.
I don't know,
Right. Exactly. And then so then you graduate with this ministry degree.
Yes.
Which is cool.
So Aaron and I started dating.
Oh, okay. When's that?
My last semester of college.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He's just a sophomore. We called him sophomore Aaron. And and again, it's so true when people say like the one time you're not looking for somebody is when it happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm graduating, I'm out, I don't, I'm done. And Aaron and I start talking, like January of my last semester. And even before we even started dating, my church, this Presbyterian church that I have been interning at forever, grew up and all this stuff, they called me and asked me to apply to be the youth pastor. The youth pastor had moved on. There was actually one person in between, and then they moved on. And they called me and said, we want you to apply for this job. And on the phone, I said, you guys don't believe in that. I had to remind them, like, I'm still a girl.
Yeah.
And they said, we would need to call you our youth director. Same office, same job, same everything, and it was still my dream job. And I said, okay. And
wow. Okay. Yeah. So you're like,
I'm going back to the PCA.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it was a really outreach-oriented youth ministry. And I just wanted to reach people. And I knew it well. And so I applied and I got that job. Meanwhile, leaving Aaron at college. So yeah, I went home, I took that job, and then Aaron and I, we only dated officially for 6 weeks in the same town.
Wow.
And we were long distance for 1.5 years. He worked hard to graduate early, and we got married 1.5 years later.
Wow. Yeah. While you're a youth director.
Yeah.
In a PCA
and
church.
When we only had, it was like the cell phones were new. It was like free after 9, so we would just talk for 9 o'clock every day after 9 o'clock.
Yeah. See, now we're dating ourselves here, Sharon.
Yep.
But people are there were time frames where things were like.
I know, the things that seem absurd. Yes.
I know.
Yes.
That's so funny. Okay, so then 1.5 years later, you're still in this ministry. And of course, now Aaron's graduating with some kind of ministry aspiration in his heart.
Yeah. I will. So when I took the job, I gave them a 3-year commitment at the church, and I was going to honor that. And it was because these students, I had actually been with them at their camps and everything since they were in middle school. So I was like, I'm going to see them through. And Aaron, to me, and the most sacrificial thing ever was like, I'll come down and be with you. And he grew up Pentecostal. He couldn't wait to do ministry. Right. He was bursting, and he kind of like gave that up for a minute, to come and be with me, which I will just forever be so grateful for. And he got like a job as a youth counselor, and he became the worship leader at my church for a minute.
Wow!
But the day the students, those seniors graduated, Aaron and I left. It was like we're gonna fulfill our commitment. And then in that background, that last few months is when we got called to plant the church that we're in now.
So wait, so you do you kind of live out the agreement 3 years.
Yeah.
And then you're like, we're planting a church.
Yep. Yes.
And yeah, I mean, like, so he's Pentecostal, you're in a PCA thing. You're like, we're planting a church. Yeah. You're not planting a PCA church.
No. So when Aaron and I met in college, it was amazing because I was like, okay, I'm definitely not like Pentecostal. I'm not like a PCA. I'm not Methodist anymore. Right. I've seen too much. Yeah. This is too real.
Right.
But I wasn't all the way like Church of God either. I was like, I'm like somewhere in the middle, and I don't, I'm like, I don't know. I'm in the middle.
I don't know anything about anything. Right. What am I?
Yeah,
right.
And I know the Bible, and I know I want people to know Jesus. And so when I met Aaron, he was actually, he was born Church of God and raised Church of God. He started preaching at 15, in the full suit. And he goes to Lee and he's like, I'm not Church of God anymore either. There was too many things, and it's so hard to even talk about it without talking about the hype of it or like stereotyping.
Right.
But, it's just some things that were like not good, and we're like, we don't want to do ministry like that.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't Church of God anymore. So we didn't know who we were.
Now, what are we? Right. Yeah.
But we were on the same page, which was awesome. So while I was a youth director at the Presbyterian Church, Aaron found the Vineyard in Chattanooga, and he interned as a student. And he called me one night, after 9, and he was like, Sharon, he's like, I found who we are. And I'm like, who are we? He's like, we're Vineyard. And that's how we became Vineyard. We found the radical middle. The kingdom of God theology was like, yes, we believe in the gifts of Spirit. We don't believe there's, one is better than the other. We believe that we don't believe in faith healing, all these things that were like all these angsty things. And he found the Vineyard. So he did his internship with the Vineyard. And that's when we knew he always wanted to plant a church one day. And so when, we got married and we're dreaming and scheming, I'm like, oh, I guess we're planning a church, and I guess it's a Vineyard Church. And there's more to that story. I mean, when we reached out, so we were going to go to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. That's what you do. It's like, okay, like you did the youth pastor thing, in people's mind. To me, it was never a stepping stone, but it was like, right. The youth pastors, now you go to seminary. And Gordon Conwell had a 2-for-1 deal. So we were like all registered and like, we're going, it was 2 for the price of 1. And on our second visit, so my PCA church thought that was great send off. You're going to seminary. That worked for everybody. Well, on that road trip, we felt God say no. And he was terrified to tell me. I was terrified to tell him.
Wow.
We have a late night conversation. I'm like, I don't think we're supposed to go there. He's like, I don't think so either. We stay up all night long. What are we supposed to do? We know we're supposed to plant church. We thought it would be like when we were 30 something. He looks up the one person he knows, which is Jeff Anderley, who was the pastor at the Chattanooga Vineyard. He's like the church planning coordinator for the Southeast.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's like, Jeff, this is where we are. I don't know. We know we're supposed to do this one day. And Jeff said, I've been waiting for your call. Let's do it.
Wow. What year is that?
Oh my goodness. 2000. The 4, 3. I'm so bad at years.
Yeah, right in there. Yeah, because I was on that team with Jeff.
Oh, crazy! Yeah. Yeah. Because
our church plant's going, but we're still small. But I remember Jeff having that role. Yeah. So wow, that's fascinating. So then he just gets a call out of nowhere from someone that'd been an intern. I think this is what I'm going to do.
He knew. It was, I think when Aaron interned in with him, he was like, oh yeah, like this guy could plant a church. And
amazing.
So, we literally sent like a 2 a.m. email. At 9 a.m. he called us and said, let's do it.
Wow.
And so, we moved from Florida. Well, so that was really hard for my PCA church because they literally didn't want us to tell anyone what we were doing. It was like so weird for them.
Right.
So that wasn't the greatest of, but it was like, again, we know this is what God's saying. This is what we're doing.
But at this point, have you even been in a vineyard?
No, never. Never in a vineyard.
This is such a, yeah, well, okay.
This is how the vineyard goes.
I was going to say like, okay. Yeah. So I've never been in a vineyard, but I'm now going to plant a vineyard. Great.
In the vineyard's defense, we were reading all the books. They're like, here's the 6 books you need to read.
I'd read a lot of books.
Yeah.
Aaron had been in a vineyard. So here we go.
But I can't, and then I went to the Chattanooga Vineyard, met Jeff, and I was like, oh yeah, this is home. This is who we've been looking for. We were just so relieved that we weren't by ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
So and then we moved to Tennessee, Aaron's hometown, because he had a major heart for, in his hometown, it was very like either you're Pentecostal or Baptist.
Right.
And it's like a weird rub. And so he was like, I am supposed to plant a church, in Maryville that represents the radical middle. And we both felt very strongly about that. So that's what we did.
That's so cool. And so, of course, you've been in Maryville then with family.
Yeah.
But not necessarily thinking about church planning when you're going those other. It's like, yeah, maybe you dream about a little.
Yeah.
Talk about, because this is where, the rubber meets the road. I mean, when you say you plant a church, do you guys gather a team? Do you raise some money? Because there's so many ways people think about that. Like, we're going to go with a big group and we're going to raise $500,000 and we'll be salaried and we will buy, or maybe even buy a piece of land and we're going to build a building over 2 years, but we'll meet in the school while we do, or it's the other way around. Like, no, I got a job and we met in our backyard and, talk about how you guys just went at that.
Yeah. Well, again, I was, I couldn't really wrap my head too much around the concept. I'm like, okay, there's you and then there's me and then we're going to build a church,
Totally.
Like,
exactly. I mean, I remember the first time somebody talking to me about it, I was like, I don't think you can just do that. It felt like somebody said to me, I think we're going to go to the moon.
Yeah, yeah.
I go, what? I remember thinking, theoretically, you could go to the moon. I mean, but I guess there's a way to do that. I just don't know if there's a way for normal people to do that. Like to just build, what do you build a rocket? I mean, like you can't just do that. And that's how it felt. I don't know how one just makes a church.
Mm-hmm. Same mindset. I had no understanding. And I remember being grateful. I at least saw my parents help start that Methodist church.
That's right.
And I saw them in a cafeteria.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, sure. And the hardest part about moving back to Tennessee was I had to leave my parents.
Yeah.
I was really, really close to them and all that, and still am, of course. And now I'm full circle. They live in Tennessee with us, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But that was hard. But so this is so interesting. So when we moved back to Maryville, Aaron still had all of his high school friends here. And they were all like really strong in their faith. And most of them were Baptist, but they were all strong in their faith. And then in a crazy turn of events, 4 of my like 6 or 7 best girlfriends who we all were discipled together in that church, they all moved to Maryville. 2 of their families did. I mean, just miraculous. Why are we all from Florida and now live in Maryville? And so Aaron and I grew up, we both had really strong groups of Christian friends in high school, which is another reason why I'm really passionate about youth ministry. And so literally my high school friends and Aaron's high school friends, we gave them all a job. And we said, okay, you're going to do kids and you're going to do this and you're going to lead that. They were all like, we're in, because we've been doing ministry with them our whole lives. And, Aaron and I both joke about how we became pastors in high school, when we started pastoring people. And so our friends were all on board. And so it was all of our friends and Aaron's parents. And we started meeting right away because we had a full band. Aaron worked at a moving company and they had literally a family band. So we're like, well, we have a worship team and a preacher. And so we found this one space to meet. And I remember one of my girlfriend's parents paid our first month rent. It was like $500. We were like, I don't know where this money, we had no money. So he paid our first month's rent and we just started having service. And Aaron and I moved and we lived in Aaron's grandmother's basement. So so glamorous. Yeah. Right. We're going to live in a basement. We had no kitchen or anything, just like a fridge. We were dorm. You have no kids. You can do anything.
Right.
So we live in a basement. I take on a job for a while as like an executive assistant somewhere. Aaron worked at the moving company again for a while. There's all kinds of really cool stories too about how I don't know. I mean, basically like right when we ran out of money and it was like right on the cusp of the, church being able to pay for us. Then someone, have like a family friend writes us the exact amount of money we moved there with. Like God just replenishes everything. My brother helps us get into our first house. Yeah. I mean, just people are just being so generous towards us. But yeah, I mean, we just roughed it for a while and started services. And I mean, we went from, this one meeting space to, things were going really well. And then there was a fire in the building and we were just renting this one room, but then the whole building gets shut down and it's at Christmas. And then we have to move to this really grimy, hotel, because there's nothing's open at Christmas. I'm it smells bad. I'm tacking up, I don't border, wallpaper. I mean, it's just disgusting. You're and we're crying, this is the end of our journey. As soon as school gets back in, Aaron has a high school teacher that is a principal now and lets us meet in a cafeteria. Oh. And then we just did the thing. I mean, we just grew little by little by little. And we met, and I think this is our fourth or fifth building. We just keep growing, keep buying, selling, renting, selling, moving. And it just kept working. Just a little bit by little, a few families at a time. And now here we are 19 years later, still doing the same thing.
And, it feels like a million years ago, but it was last year I did the podcast with Joel Seymour. Mm-hmm. And Joel and I talked about this, and it's found its way into our prayers as we prayed as a team, or even I've been praying for the Vineyard, this idea that there's lots of people that one of the easiest ways they could do ministry is to just go home. Go where you've had favor,
right?
Where you have natural connections, where you have a place of stability. Because in your story, there's so many components there that you get a boost.
Yeah.
Because there's just a number of things that just sort of work more easily.
People already believe in you, in a sense.
Yeah. Well, and there's a natural affinity. There's a connection. I kind of know how things work here. So you're sort of, I'm sure for you it was a little different than for him.
Right.
But for him, it's his uptick on where do people go? Or what are the things they like or don't like or do or don't do? Mm-hmm. What's sort of the spiritual climate and how does this whole thing kind of map out? And so that in the sort of feel sense, but then also just friends. I have friends. There's people I went to school with. There's people who can just join us. There's different ways that they'll just use their gifts easily. Mm-hmm. I don't need to spend a year figuring out who is this and why do they do what they do? And, all that stuff just happens. Mm-hmm. Family support is not a small thing, especially if you have small kids.
Yeah.
To have some folks that can watch your kids while you go to dinner is not a small thing.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
Or just have an evening as a young married couple. So there's so many little things that fit. And even to hear the way that the turn of that story, the guy that he knew was now a principal that enabled the thing. Mm-hmm. That little turn doesn't happen as easily when you're in a city you don't know anybody. Now, it doesn't mean it can't. Of course it can. God can give favor in any way he wants.
Sure.
But I think sometimes people, they're thinking about, whatever. What's the grandiose, what's the place that can transform the universe? If we could just have 25 churches in LA and, whatever. Mm-hmm. Hollywood could be da-da-da-da. And there's people that are going to be called to do that.
Sure.
But sometimes we look past or even asking God, what would it look like for me to just start either just right where I'm at? Mm-hmm. I don't have to go anywhere. Yeah. I can start right here. There's a Vineyard Church. It's amazing how many vineyards get planted because somebody gets in touch with the Spirit and they're driving an hour and a half to the Vineyard Church they know. Mm-hmm. And eventually they're like, well, what if we just did a small group over here? There's a few folks over here. And then they build another small group. And then somebody says, well, it sounds like you might have a church plant. They're like, I don't know. I have a job or I have a life. I don't know. But then slowly it just builds into a church. Or the thing you're describing, gosh, where I grew up, there's just not a church that I believe in the way that I believe in what I've experienced at college or and this other thing. What would it look like for me to think about going home to plant a church? And I've thought about you guys, and there's a lot of people that have a similar story where there's a different kind of favor that you're just picking up. You don't have to build it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's also a resistance where it's like, am I really going to go home? You know, like I left. Am I really going back home?
Right.
Maybe this isn't as glamorous or whatever, but there's a way God just can use that favor. Yeah. And I have a hunch we'll see a lot more of that. I have a hunch there'll be that. I mean, that's somewhat prophetic, but I have confidence in that.
It does sort of fit. And I think, again, you know, when I always just love the parable where it's like, well, if God gives you a few things and you're faithful, then he'll give you a little bit more and you're faithful. And, I mean, so much of our story, I really think, like even our church plant story in the middle of Maryville, I still feel like started in my high school years, you know, because it's like when you start building that reputation, when people are willing to follow you, then it's not that weird when they're like, hey, we're going to start a church. People are like, okay. It's like, and with Aaron, I mean, he was called like, you know, preacher boy or something, or, you know, in high school. And so it wasn't a stretch when he started something in the middle of a city. You know, people are like, yeah, we've been, you know, we thought you'd do this someday. So I just think like the longevity of just being someone that people can trust or willing to follow. I don't know.
Well, and collecting, it's interesting hearing your story too, because as you're out and about doing all the things you do, there are people that over time are like, I want to respond to your leadership. Like, I like the way you lead. I feel like we've done something together. So, hey, if you're in Maryville, I don't know where that is. I wouldn't have picked it on a map, but I guess that's on your heart. So, sure, I'll move from Florida to there, whatever. Yeah, and they do, which is like another thing you just can't discount, like how many folks, as you're leading in your life, like you're saying, I'm being faithful. I guess I'm a PCA youth director. Whatever. That people do start to say, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'd like to do it with you.
Yeah.
Because I think people think like, well, whatever I would do, I'd have to do this alone, or I'd be starting in some random place. That's very rarely the case if you've been leading. Like if you've been faithful in front of you, there are often people who are like, I'll just do whatever you're going to do.
Right.
And it still kind of blows our mind, Danielle and I, to think like, really? Like you want to do that? They're like, yeah, whatever you're doing, I'll do that. And it's like, oh, I hadn't like counted on that. I just kind of thought if we were going to do this, we had to just throw it all in, but God will pull together people to help. So, okay, so let me ask, we're almost done. We'll land the plane here, I promise. But so when you think about those early years church planning, obstacle, breakthrough moments, if someone's in that moment, they're going, okay, the thing we wanted to do broke.
Yeah.
Is this still worth pushing through these I mean, like, what kept you guys going in the like moving company, executive assistant, living in the basement, fire burns the room, you know, you just think like, it's just so not good. What kept you in it? How do you keep going?
You don't even know, you know, you do look back and it's like, well, I remember bawling my eyes out, you know, I remember thinking, what in the world? We remember when all of those very same best friends who were all amazing, couldn't have done any of it without them, would start screening our phone calls when we had to take down the cafeteria again on Saturday night. Right. You know, I mean, you remember all those and you're like, well, yeah. But I just think at every point, I mean, God just meets you. You know, there'll just be one one new family, or you got to invite one new person, or, you know, it just those little things along the way are just like, okay, like we're just doing this. I think, and because we, you know, uprooted everything to go do this, it was never like optional. Like we really felt like this is what we were going to do. So we were doing it. Yeah. I don't think like for us, we never talked about quitting. So, I mean, we cried, we got upset, we were depressed, but I mean, we never was like, should we even do this? But I don't think we ever had those conversations. We just we're now, I mean, it's like, and things could have gone terribly bad. I mean, not every church plant works. Right. So it's okay if you know, okay, this isn't working, but there was always just enough, you know, for us to just say, oh, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. And then, you know, being able to reach, I mean, as our Vineyard Church has been interesting. I mean, most people that come to our church are Baptist or Pentecostal. I mean, there's no Vineyard people. And so we're always reteaching Vineyard values. We're always teaching Kingdom of God stuff. We're always teaching the radical middle because it's constant in this area. And then long story short, I like this part of the story. It feels redemptive, but I did end up speaking in tongues as a Vineyard pastor at some point. And because I would still have that little doubt in the back of my mind, and I remember one time it was in my car and the Lord was like, I was praying in tongues in my head for the first time ever. Yeah. Just open your mouth. And I was like, God, I would rather die than like fake anything, and he was like, just, you're already doing it. And so I just started speaking in tongues and it was such a sweet moment. And it was just in time where we were about to deal with a lot of spiritual warfare. And so it was very, very timely, but I do want to say that it did not change everything. It did not, I didn't all of a sudden figure out, all those things. And I just think that was such a gift from God to me, one of those things, like, you don't have to keep doubting this. You don't have to, because even in the Vineyard, I was like, I don't know. I don't have all these gifts that everybody has, and so it was just a really sweet gift. And then it's just been really healing as we continue to lead a very radical middle church.
So good. Well, and you're leading so prolifically. I mean, now you're a regional leader. You guys have been involved on the executive team for the Vineyard. You've done all the things. You've been in who knows how many. Is there a task force or a leadership group you guys haven't been
probably not
connected to?
All things worship. You can count me out.
Okay. So you've not done worship.
I have no musical gifting.
Yeah. And so when you think about, because now, you've been in this a minute, when you say 20 years, what have you seen? Like when you look at the trajectory of what we're doing, what gets you excited? What do you see that's changing or different, even as you kind of have your chair as a regional leader? What is your observation?
So being on the executive team was an eye-opening experience. And that was such a beautiful time. And even then, the way God works with us, it was like, well, husbands and wives aren't going to be on the team together anymore. But then Phil asked Aaron and I to share a chair,
Right.
So this is just the stuff that God does, I felt overlooked. I mean, the Vineyard's been so sweet to me and to us, and we've loved it. But being on the executive team, I did get an inside view of this is really beautiful, but it is kind of a mess. There's so many things that we don't have the manpower to do. I mean, it was just so glaringly obvious. And Phil was so courageous in everything he did and bringing in a new generation, and so courageous to do that and then lead in the reorg. And we got to be part of that. And we had a voice in it. And everything that is happening right now, I cannot explain enough how much of it is like a no-brainer. Like it had to happen. Everything that is happening needed to happen for us to, continue. We were just reaching a ceiling, and it was reaching a place of unhealth. It was just not sustainable anymore. Yeah. So I'm a huge advocate of the reorg, of everything going on in the future. And then as an RL, because I'm less than 2 years in, I just see like real-time examples of all the things that we need that we still don't have. Yeah. So I'm very hopeful because we finally have people, but we could literally hire twice as many people and still, but I'm hopeful that all of the things that have needed to be addressed, they are all being addressed, like all of them, all the questions that have needed to be asked, they're all being asked. They are all being worked on. And so I just have a lot of faith and confidence in Vineyard USA, in the team, in what you're doing. And it was just needed. So I feel, because I was in the room, I feel like I'm called to be an ambassador for it, because it's easier for me to trust the whole thing. I was in the room, right? Yeah. You've seen every bit, right? Yeah. Yeah, and I know the people. Like, maybe I wouldn't trust Caleb if I didn't know Caleb, but I know Caleb. Yeah. Same with you. Same with everybody. I'm like, guys, I know these people. I know their hearts. Like, they're doing a good work. And so, I feel called to just be an ambassador, for what Vineyard USA is doing, and then help lead in the health of that, help people fill the gap with trust, help people, have patience in the waiting, because I know there'll be a lot of deliverables, but it takes a minute. Yeah, it does. Well, and it's new. It's a lot of new things. So that takes a minute to get
that rhythm down. But I'm so grateful for you, because you guys, also as local church pastors, you've continually decided if there's a way to serve outside of our church, we'll help, whether that's in church planting, whether that's as area or regional leaders, or, you've done a ton with the different women's initiatives we've had of just how do we train up new leaders? How do we support leaders, women that are leading? You've just, you and Aaron are two people in our movement that are always like, sure, if I could be helpful, I'd love to help. And somehow, miraculously, you've built like a thriving, growing church while investing. But the more I do this, the more I think, I don't know that it's somehow. I think maybe it is the investing and being invested in that also helps you build a certain kind of church.
Oh, yeah. The Vineyard's done so much for us over the 20 years. I mean, I think that's the thing. It's like, we know how much all those relationships have helped us, just being around the table with people. There's nobody that understands pastors the way pastors do. Right. So the relationships we've built have been huge. I mean, every time we got stuck, we just went to a church that was slightly bigger than ours and was like, tell us what to do. Yep. Every time. So, I mean, we very much feel grateful, and we see how important the connection is. Like, we don't want to do this on our own. Yeah. And if I'm just honest, I mean, whether it might not even be in the Vineyard, just outside the Vineyard even, I don't think I've seen churches grow larger and healthy that aren't connected outside of themselves, where they serve and they are being served. So it's both. So even if you're like, well, what kind of thing can I join so I get help? That sort of works, but it sort of doesn't work, because that sort of builds a certain kind of relationship. Yeah. Whereas if you're like, no, I'm here to help and to be helped, that builds a more intimate kind of realistic, honest connection. And then the posture you described of like, at every stage, we just thought, who can help us? We're here. There's somebody a little bit ahead of us, and there's probably somebody that we can help. And if we can just keep doing that, we'll keep learning, we'll keep growing, we'll keep doing things. But that's a certain orientation. That's a choice you're making. Like, that's the kind of pastors we want to be. It's kind of leaders we want to be. And we're going to keep bringing people in. You've always, come on in and hang out with our team and teach on a Sunday and tell me what you see. And it's so good for the local church to know that we're connected into something bigger too. And it's just encouraging. It's like, this is a work of God. It's not just like I don't want it to be, I mean, clearly we're like, this is not any kind of an Aaron Sharon show or anything like that. It's like we're part of something, bigger. Yeah. It's good. It definitely is edifying to our church. Oh, well, it's such a gift. I'm so grateful for you and the effort you keep giving to our movement, our little thing. I mean, it's amazing how faithful you guys have been. 20 years, man. I mean, that's a long time. And new building and moving in soon. So this is the first building we haven't renovated ourselves. I feel like we could be church flippers. Hey, that could be a show. There might be something. There might be something to that. Yeah. I know. So I mean, this is a different scope of work, but we're excited to not do it ourselves. Well, and it's interesting, because I think at every stage you're in church too, you think, well, if we could be at that stage, it just won't be the same amount of work. It'll be easier. Yeah. And in some senses it's easier, but truly in other senses it's harder. There's no window you're in this thing there's not work. Right. It's just always work. Coming from an entrepreneur family, I think there's a part of them that's like, well, you should be like coasting now. Passive income. Like, you did the thing. If you're an entrepreneur, in the real world, it's like, oh yeah, like other people just do stuff for you now. Or my brother was like, you don't own the building. I'm like, no, this is the church. Like, it's not mine. Right. It is interesting just being in an entrepreneur family. It's like, no, the church world is very different. Yes. Like, the more work we do, I think the more work we make for ourselves. Well, and we always think there's more people that don't know Jesus. There's more opportunity. There's more hope for others. So even if we have more, we want to give more.
and there's more people to do stuff with. So yeah, or there's another opportunity to plant a church, which always costs. I mean, so even to send, there's always more, and it always costs more. But I'm grateful for you, and I appreciate you taking some time to be with me today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The We Are Vineyard podcast is a production from the team at Vineyard USA. If you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. Leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Connect with us online for additional resources. Our website is vineyardusa.org, and we're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at VineyardUSA. Thanks for listening. See you next week.